who was mugged at knife point just yards from her front door is calling on Glasgow City Council to introduce more street lighting and security cameras in Dennistoun. Sarah May Phillo says she no longer feels safe in her own neighbourhoods. The council say they're satisfied that street lighting in the area is acceptable and have asked residents to cut back trees which obstruct the lights. Morel Wilson has the story.
Sarah May was on her way home one evening last month when she was robbed at knife point.
He walked up very quickly and silently behind me, put a knife at my side and just said, "Give me all your stuff." When I walk at night, I can feel my blood pressure grow. I can feel my heart rate go up, and I don't feel secure on my own.
She believes more street lighting and security cameras would make Dennistoun safer and has launched a petition calling on Glasgow City Council to implement these measures.
I would feel safer if I was walking home in a well-lit area. I would feel much safer if there were cameras watching me walk home. If there had been a camera on a lamppost where I was mugged, this would be solved in a matter of days.
A spokesperson for Community Safety Glasgow said they're sorry to hear of her ordeal and that they're working to deploy mobile CCTV vans and community enforcement officers in the area.
A spokesperson for Glasgow City Council say they've assessed the current levels of street lighting in the area and are satisfied that they meet acceptable standards. They went on to say they've instructed owners to cut back trees which may be obstructing the street lights.
The idea that some robber is going to come into the area and see our well-kept gardens and stay clear, that's just silly, and I think the council really must think we're buttoned up the back to think that that's an answer.
Several other incidents of violence against women have occurred in Dennistoun over the last few months. On the 26th of February, another woman was mugged at knife point, and on the 6th of April, a woman was sexually assaulted in the area.
I would probably suggest that people give them what they want for the sake of your own safety. People that have these experiences very often, deserve to have counselling and support. If it's happened in your own doorstep, it's in your own area, this is where you probably will continue to live. Do you feel safe there anymore? That's really unpleasant to feel like that.
Police Scotland say in Sarah May's case, inquiries are ongoing to trace the person responsible. She says she now won't go out alone and suffers from a lack of sleep, but she hopes that something positive can come from her experience, that it won't happen again. Morel Wilson, STV News, Dennistoun.
Well, we're joined now by another woman who was the victim of an attack to hear her story. Madeline Black says she has managed to forgive her attackers and she's now involved in a project that helps people come to terms with their experiences. Welcome to the studio. Thanks for coming in, Madeline. So tell me, first of all, let's go back to where your journey started. What happened?
Okay, my story starts in the late 1970s, and I was gang raped by 2 American teenagers when I was 13 years old.
And what impact, looking back, did that have on you? How did that set you up for the rest of your life?
Had a huge impact on me. I didn't report it and I didn't speak about it for 3 years, but in that process it kind of leaked out of me. I tried to commit suicide. I ended up in a children's psychiatric hospital. I started to use drugs and alcohol. I developed an eating disorder, so it did have a huge impact on me.
And with all of that, what was the turning point? What changed things?
The turning point really was when I decided to become a mother. When I first met my husband, I told him I would never have children. I thought that giving birth would be like being raped again, and I just thought that something I didn't want to do. He asked me, and I just decided that my best revenge would be to really live a really good and happy life. And I've had 3 children since then, so obviously I've got past that phobia of not having children. And it was really decided that my revenge would be to have a really good life.
And going on from that, your message now is all about forgiveness. I mean, was that a difficult point for you, especially in the harrowing situation you went through?
Well, forgiveness wasn't something that I set out to do. When I was last having therapy, my therapist suggested that perhaps they weren't born rapists. And at first I was completely outraged. I thought, how could he suggest such a thing? I thought that they were evil monsters. And, but he planted a seed and that seed started to grow. And the more I thought about it, I realised that they weren't born rapists. I don't believe that anybody is. And whatever happened to them in this life to turn them into people that can rape, to inflict the violence that they inflicted onto me, it made me realise that they couldn't have had the best of lives. Whatever they had experienced or witnessed or seen, that influenced how they behaved that night.
Now, tell me about the Forgiveness Project as well.
Okay, it was started by Marina Cantacuzino, who is a journalist, in 2004, and she was just interested in starting with an exhibition called The F Word, and it was funded by her friend Anita Roddick, who was the owner of the Body Shop. But people were very interested in it, and she just started to collect stories, and I believe there's over 150 different stories from both victims like myself and people that have been perpetrators as well.
And why did you decide to share your story?
Through the powers of social media, I met a woman on the Forgiveness Project's website who went to prison to meet the man who raped her, and I just thought that she was amazing. It was such courage to be able to do that. She met him face to face, and I just thought, well, if she could do that, then I can share my story.
And you have the book there, is your story inside that book?
This book was produced, it was published last March, and I'm one of 40 stories in the book. So it's all different types of stories, it's not just about sexual violence.
And for the people in the piece we saw there, I mean, their experiences, maybe not as harrowing as yours, but just as horrifying. What would you say to them?
You mean in regards to forgiveness? Or, it's a very personal journey, and I'm not saying it is one for everybody, but for me, I can't really speak for them. It's one that really brought understanding, it brought peace, it stopped so many issues that I was having. So for me, it was the right decision to make. That woman's journey is going to be her own journey.
And as for the book itself, if people are reading it or finding you on social media, what are you hoping that they take from your story in particular?
Well, what I really want to do, it's about forgiveness, but it's also about highlighting sexual violence. It is such a reality in our society that I hope by speaking out, I'm starting to speak publicly now, and I've written a book about my experience, that we can end the shame. I'm not ashamed to say that I was raped, and we can end the stigma. And I hope one day the more people speak out, they will see that there's nothing to be ashamed about, but hopefully even more than that, that we can end this culture that's so entrenched in our society.
And you mentioned there is a stigma around, saying words like rape and all that. Have you seen progress from, back in the 70s until now?
Well, what I discovered, I completely underestimated the effect when I shared my story, what it would have. And when I did share my story online, people came to speak to me and they told me about their experience, and it gave them a bit of hope because they see how I am today. They know that I'm not affected, I'm not traumatized anymore. So I think the more women that we can encourage to speak out, there will be less shame. There's nothing to be ashamed about. It was something that was done to us.
And what would you say to women like Sarah May we saw in the package there?
I would say that she should really get support, and I agree with her. Street lighting is nothing to do whether somebody is going to mug you or not. It really needs education at a young age, whether it's about knife crime, whether it's about sexual violence, that we need to educate young men, maybe from nursery level, about respect, about consent, about violence against women or against anyone.
And if you could go back, or maybe if you saw the men who attacked you now, what would you say to them?
I don't know what I would say to them, but I would be very interested to hear what they would have to say to me.
And if people want to find out more about your story, how can they do that?
I'm on Twitter, MadBlack65, or I have a Facebook page, and I'm hoping to hear any day now from a publisher. I've just written a book called 44 Bows, so hopefully it will be published very soon.
And briefly, a message to anyone out there who's, something's happened to them and they're really struggling with it.
I would say that they should get support. There are great services around, especially in Glasgow. It's Glasgow Rape Crisis. You can go for counselling, but to let them know that they can get past it, that the essence of them is never hurt. They're not their body, they're far more than their body, and one day they can get past it.
Madeline, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. And that's it for the moment.